Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today to discuss our 2025 City Health Policy Assessment. We are incredibly excited to share the results of our latest city assessment and to highlight which cities earned medals for adopting healthy policies. Additionally, we have a special treat for you. In just a few moments, we are hosting a bipartisan panel of experts who will share how cities are getting things done and what to expect in the coming year. So get your questions ready. You can submit questions for our panel by using the Q&A feature below. For those of you who are new to City Health, my name is Katrina Forrest, and I am City Health's Executive Director. And to start, I want to share a little bit more about who we are and what we do. City Health is a national health policy initiative and a partnership between the de Beaumont Foundation and Kaiser Permanente. In a nutshell, we work with cities to adopt a menu of tested policy solutions that provide healthy choices and create the conditions for everyone to live their healthiest lives. We work directly with the 75 largest cities in America to adopt policies on our menu, which we call our policy package. And as you can see here, our footprint is vast. We are operating in 33 states and the District of Columbia. Still, if you are joining us today from a community outside of these big cities, please do not worry. All of our resources and tools are available for free on our website at cityhealth.org. Now, our policy package includes a menu of 12 policy interventions that are designed to meet cities' unique needs. 1/3 of the package is devoted to promoting safe and affordable housing. Other policies are designed to provide access to parks and green space, healthy food, and safer streets. Each of our policies are complementary, and they knit together a tapestry of solutions that work in concert to ensure all residents have a safe place to live, a healthy body and mind, and a thriving environment. Now, we revise our policy package every 5 years, and next year will be the 5th and final year of the current policy package. So stay tuned throughout next year so we can share more information with you about our new 3.0 policy package that we'll begin to assess cities on starting in 2027. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we cannot do this work alone. We have 11 amazing partners who support each of our policy solutions. These experts are available to support cities in our footprint and collaborate with us to share new tools and resources that anyone can access. And finally, we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for our phenomenal partners at Temple University's Center for Public Health Law Research. We work with a team of legal epidemiologists who comb through city, county, and state law for each of our cities, and they evaluate the strength and number of policies on the books. The result of that assessment is a detailed city-by-city evaluation of each policy based on a set of criteria that demonstrate a policy's effectiveness and its promotion of health equity. Cities have the ability to earn medals within each of our policy solutions, and we award overall medals based on the total number of policy medals that they receive. For a gold, a city must earn at least 5 gold medals across the policy package. For silver, they must earn at least 5 gold or silver medals. And for bronze, a city must earn at least 5 gold, silver, or bronze medals. Unfortunately, cities that earn 4 or fewer medals do not qualify for an overall medal. So now, without further ado, the moment that we have all been waiting for, I am proud to announce the results of our 2025 policy assessment. This year, 51 of our 75 cities earned a gold, silver, or bronze overall medal. That's 68% of our cities and an increase of 5 additional cities from last year. That means that 47.6 million people now live in a city that has earned an overall medal. That's 4 million more people than last year, and 8.5 million more people than our first assessment of this policy package in 2022. Further, that's 8.5 million more people who now benefit from living in a city that invests in health-promoting upstream policies. Of course, our highest achievers are our gold medal cities, and I want to congratulate the cities of Boston, Denver, Minneapolis, New Orleans, Portland, San Antonio, and St. Louis. And this year, we are adding a brand new city to that list, Chicago. Chicago has earned an overall silver medal since 2022. And this year, the city strengthened their healthy food purchasing policy, earning them their 5th gold medal policy and qualifying them for an overall gold. Congratulations to Mayor Brandon Johnson, the Chicago Public Health Commissioner, Simbo Ige, and the many amazing city leaders and local advocates that made this achievement possible. Congratulations, Chicago. You have joined the top echelon of cities that are cementing a legacy of health in their communities. In addition to our newest gold medal city, we have 10 others who improved their medal standings. We have 26 overall silver medal cities, adding Cleveland, Columbus, Louisville, Nashville, and Oakland to their ranks. And we have 17 overall bronze medal cities, with 5 cities earning an overall medal for the first time: Austin, Cincinnati, Irvine, Phoenix, and Tulsa. Congratulations to all 51 of our cities for your achievement. We want to recognize you, so please reach out to us if you're interested in having us come to your city and share your success with your communities. Now, diving into the policy medals. Cities earned a total of 434 individual policy medals across all 12 policies. The top 3 policy areas with the highest levels of adoption include high-quality accessible pre-K, where we had 71 medals, green space, where we had 58 medals, and affordable housing trusts, where we had 46 medals. Those policy solutions continue to be the most pursued by cities prioritizing early childhood education, access to parks and nature, and housing affordability. Comparing these results to last year, the policies that saw the biggest year-over-year increases include smoke-free indoor air, green space, and a tie for both complete streets and legal support for renters. We'll be diving into some of the reasons behind the medals in our panel. So again, please get your questions ready and enter them into the Q&A box below. As we enter into the final year of our second policy package, there are still plenty of policy opportunities to help your city get to gold. I'd like to close by offering a few key takeaways from this year's assessment. Number 1, cities are leading. In the face of extraordinary circumstances, including political pressures and constrained funding, cities continue to pursue policies that support the health and well-being of their residents. Local leaders can't pause when residents' needs persist. That's why we're continuing to see policy adoption at the local level, with cities earning more than 400 policy medals this year. Number 2, cities are the catalyst for change. Local government is where solutions are tried and tested. As the level of government closest to the people, cities are accelerating new ideas and acting as proving grounds for solutions that can eventually scale nationally. We saw 35 policy improvements this year as cities continue to pursue solutions that promote health and equity. Number 3, cities are ready for the opportunities in 2026. The path to a healthier future depends on local leadership and focusing on the most critical policy levers. This is our momentum going into 2026. We know housing will continue to be a top policy driver, and we expect to see movement across our 3 housing policies. There are also opportunities in policies where cities can lead by example, such as our healthy food purchasing policy that helped Chicago get to an overall gold this year. One final overarching takeaway is that City Health is your partner. We are here to help. We're here to equip local leaders with the evidence and tools needed to navigate challenges and ensure creative, equity-centered solutions can flourish, one policy at a time. I invite you all to explore our assessment results on our website, again, cityhealth.org. We have an interactive map where you can see how a city near you rates, and you can explore a detailed evaluation of each policy based on our criteria. And without further ado, I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague, Akeem Anderson, who will moderate our dynamic panel of local government experts. So with that, Akeem, please take it away.
Uh, Thank you, Katrina. Let's go ahead and get started. We have Tim Barnes, the president of Community Leaders of America, joining us. Phyllis Dickerson, the CEO of African American Mayors Association, and Virginia Mayer, the executive director of Democratic Mayors Association. When coming up with this panel, I wanted to reach out to one, people who are working extremely closely with local leaders, but two, people who, in my role, I've gotten the chance to watch closely at on the conference circuit, as we say. And these are three people who I greatly admire for the work that they're doing. We can do deeper intros as we get into the questions, but first, I wanted to ask you all, because you work so closely with local elected officials, can you describe what you're seeing as the biggest challenge they faced this year when it comes to public health, but also as it relates to the City Health report that's come out? Are there any particular policy changes or medals that cities have gained that you're particularly proud of or excited to see?
So I guess I'll jump in and start. One of the other grants that we do is an American Beverage Association grant that we do on nutrition and health and that kind of thing. And so one of the things that we saw, we just went to New Orleans for our board meeting, and in New Orleans we highlighted this healthy box. And so what it was a box that you actually get when postpartum. So you have your baby. And then for the next 6 months, you're able to get this healthy food box for the mom so that they can, be healthy, holistic. But we also do wraparound services while we're in the home with that mom and that baby. And so those are examples of, other wraparound services that are available to our cities. And that's usually the biggest challenge for most cities, the monetary resources that they need, and then the collaborations. But because of organizations like you, they're able to, be able to provide some of those services and figure out where the gaps are, whether it's, Chicago for us or Baltimore or even Cleveland, some of the big cities. They don't necessarily sometimes have as much collaboration with even their health department there because it's state funded. So that's where we see normally the most gaps, just the financial need that's necessary and the collaboration. But thank you to City Health and partners like you.
Virginia?
Sure. So first, thank you to Du Beaumont and Kaiser Permanente and City Health for doing this. This is critically important, and as you state in your overview, that every person in every city deserves to live the healthiest life possible. And your focus on cities as catalysts of change. I think for me, the biggest factor this year has been cities not only leading but delivering in a time of uncertainty, and being able to provide resources not only across their community, and in some cases like Minneapolis or Newark or Tampa, delivering services directly to the residents where they are, meeting them where they are, both physically as well as otherwise. And so I think this has been the last year has been a time of uncertainty. And so been very, very proud of the mayors, not only leading but delivering, and also in the case of engaging other partners, because mayors can't do it alone. In the case of housing, for example, cities are working with state legislatures to pass different legislation that will impact access to affordable housing. Or in the case of the food crisis, San Antonio's reached out to the community overall to deliver food in a time when access to SNAP is not there. So being able to see the focus on community over chaos, which is something that Mayor Bibb has focused on and leaned in on, as well as a number of other mayors. So really the focus on community and delivering where people are and what they need.
Tim?
Yeah, with Phyllis and Virginia, just one, it's nice to be with you on this webinar, and Akeem, Katrina, Cassandra, Tom, everybody at City Health. I can't thank you enough for the leadership, but also the partnership that we've had and been able to collaborate now going on it. Geez, I want to say it's about 6 to 8 years, and I think it's really it's just been a fantastic opportunity for us, for the community leaders of America, with Republican mayors, city council, and county leaders. So thank you, appreciate it. And while I'm at it, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, right? So, I'll tell you, we have a monthly virtual meeting, and with our forum, and that's what we call our mayor, city council, and county leaders. And the biggest challenge, and it comes to everything and the biggest one for public health is budget. And that it continues to be a challenge. But one of the things that we've seen is and I really give a lot of credit to City Health on this, with our forum, communicating what works in Omaha, can work in Fontana, can work in Fort Worth, et cetera, is being able to, see other communities that have, if you will, looked at the policies from City Health and go, you know what, my community can buy into this. This is something that we can do. Be it if they're one of the, if you will, the 75 cities, or if they're not. It's really just how do you apply it, right? Even the largest cities in the country, you can apply it to city 250, not necessarily in the top 75. Education, communication with constituents, and I think both Phyllis and Virginia hit on that, is really and I think that's one of the challenges that we hear is going, hey, here are the things that we are able to we have in our community, right? For public health, where can you get it? How can you get there? The challenges of transportation, continue from an infrastructure side. So that's one of the things that I think that we've seen as far as challenges. The catalyst for change. I invite you all. I was thinking about that yesterday when we were preparing for this. If go to at GOP local, which is our X handle, and you see communities from small to big, Oklahoma City to Round Rock, Texas. They're just doing things that are, I mean, they're earth shattering. They're looking at each other within the forum, but they're also looking at, if you will, members of DMA, DMO, NDCO, because that's where we want to make sure that we collaborate as well too, and it's made a big difference. So, but I do encourage you just to. That's where we tell our forum, hey, go. In fact, we had I think we reposted yesterday with City Health, Akeem, and I, it's truly being able to communicate, within, social media or however. And I think we've done an effective job at that, knowing that the solutions that City Health, it doesn't apply for everybody. Or if you don't have to be 10 for 10, because I wasn't that good in school. Usually it was about 6 for 10 for myself. But I think there's it's what size fits all. So I applaud you for all your work over the years, but also this past year.
Yeah, thank you. I want to pick up on a point that you made. You and I have talked about this, especially as it relates to some of the program or panel offerings that we can City Health supports CLA and at their forum. But I'd love to hear Virginia and Phyllis, their thoughts on this as well. Now, the report looks at the 75 largest cities. And a question that I get, especially at National League of Cities City Summit, from some of the smaller cities, well, what about us? What about us? How do you think some smaller cities can leverage the policy package and the lessons learned from this report?
Well, I think is kind of like Tim said, that sharing of those best practices. most of ours, it's like a family reunion when you come to an AMA conference. And so with that in mind, they actually call each other. They have group text, they call each other and they're like, how did you do A? Like, how did you get this done? And then they take those shared lessons and best practices because a lot of them are bedroom communities to some of the larger cities that are out there. And so it's just that when we constantly highlight the work, they literally pick up the phone and call each other. They email me and they ask, "Can you give me mayor such and such number? Because I want to talk to them about, how did they get the gold?" And they're very, very competitive with each other. Let me just say that. And so I mean, they're constantly asking, "Well, why did so and so get it and I didn't get it?" I'm like, "Why don't you call and ask about their program?" And so it is a very competitive, lovable relationship in AMA, and they don't mind highlighting and sharing their best practices.
So through, I think as you know, Akeem, every week we feature cities in action, or mayors in action actually. And so, and to Phyllis's point, it is competitive, and the mayors always say, why aren't we featured in that? But at the end of the year, given that we do this every week, we have a whole collection of housing practices, for example. Given that you were talking before about what are the major issues that cities are focused on, housing by far, housing and public safety, and economic resources, or affordability as the catchphrase now. Those seem to be the top ones. But I think to the point that you were making, Akeem, the ability for you all to provide examples, not only examples in one particular area around housing, but you have through your portfolio of policies, you have shown the various ways that mayors can and elected leaders can influence everyday people's public health. You're meeting people where they are. And I think that these ideas, city officials can steal them. They're out there. And I think the fact that you present this in a way that you present in a way that you've got cities that are adopting a range of policies that impact the overall health of the community is very impactful.
Tim, anything else you want to add?
Actually, Akeem, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in here just on a second, but because when we talk about housing affordability, and Virginia, you're right, it's there's a lot of people throwing around the word affordability, and okay, so what is that, right? But one of the things that I think that we're seeing in our mayors and local leaders, again, housing and affordability. Yeah, it's incredibly important, but you know what? They're not just talking, right? It's what we're talking about here, though. Collaborating, right? Locally, we are most certainly seeing our mayor, city council, and county leaders. And this has really been a big push for us since one of our national conferences. Actually, gosh darn them, in McKinney, Texas, is local businesses, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, but then also being able to work with our national partners, yourselves, but others like that we all work with too, NAHB, NAA, AARP, and etc. I think it's important to get from the local side and but also from our national perspective, working with those national perspective, the national, if you will, associations, their local associations. And we always say we have a library of solutions going back now 11 years. And some of the things that we're doing on housing can work in one community, but we got to make sure that it applies to others. The other just point real quick, and it's we get at our national conferences, we have quite the variety of our forum. We give a footprint of our forum that attend, And we have large municipalities, counties, and we have, if you will, mid-size and some small, right? So, large areas, suburbs, rural, etc. And it really is, I think it's amazing, and Keem, you hit on this, the number of folks, like when we were at NLC just a few weeks ago, but even at our conferences where they're like, boy, I want to apply what City Health is doing in its policy, in its policies to my community. But again, it's all adaptability, right? And we've seen that from communities of 75,000, 50,000, for that matter, even smaller than that. So again, I think that's the key for us to keep collaborating, and also with Phyllis, Virginia, myself, DMO, NDCO, how we can continue to collaborate when the opportunities arise on these very important issues that City Health brings to the table.
Oh, thank you. One of the things that, even when small cities ask about, well, when can they get a medal, they're very appreciative of the resource that we have in terms of legislative language that we pull from all of the cities. So I know I've shared some Fort Worth legislative language with some other members in CLA. I've connected people in some of the smaller cities to some of their colleagues in larger cities as they learn from them. That's kind of the benefit that we see in City Health. I want to shift gears a little, and we'll talk about some politics, so to speak. We'll get into the nitty gritty of it. Virginia, I'll start with you. You have a lot of Democratic mayors who are leading cities in some deeply red states or even some purple states. What have you seen that's worked well when mayors frame these policies, from complete streets to green space, as common sense quality of life investments?
I think that first and foremost that the mayors are very, very. First of all, the public health I don't consider, and I don't think the mayors consider this to be a partisan issue. This is a bread and butter issue. This is about their constituents and about their community, and I think next to issues such as housing and public safety, quality of life is right there. And I think the other aspect that the mayors are focused on is two other things. One is why the investments in public health matter, because dollars are tight, and so why does it matter to focus on prevention? Why does it matter to focus on chronic health care and addressing chronic health needs? Why does that matter? And so I think that is a big thing that the mayors are focused on, and that is not partisan. And also I think that the mayors are able to show the economic impact, the return on investment, that if we have better quality of life, businesses are more likely to locate there, residents are more likely to stay there, and on and on. So I think that quality of life is a very big focus in terms of return on investment. So I don't see this as there are some health issues that obviously would be considered so-called partisan, but the bottom line is right now it's all about delivering for your community and for delivering for all of your community. And one of the things that may become partisan here is delivering services for immigrants, for example. A big focus for this year has been on making sure everybody has access to care and to access to safe communities and things like that. So I think what I would say is that the mayors don't see this as a partisan issue. They're delivering public health for their community, and that's what they were elected to do.
Thank you for that. Phyllis, I want to talk to you a little about preemption. So preemption can hit majority Black cities especially hard when it limits local action on worker protections, tenant rights, or even public health. A few years ago, Tulsa passed a rental inspection law that created a rental registry. But the state went back and preempted them. The original law that Tulsa passed would have earned them a bronze medal, giving them a final medal that they needed to get an overall medal. Unfortunately, because of the state level preemption, they were unable to get that medal. They did work really hard to get it this year. So I'm glad to see that they found another path to an overall City Health medal. But what what strategies overall are you seeing African American mayors use, whether it's in coalition with other mayors, business leaders, or even community advocates to navigate some preemption issues or even push back against those limits?
So, for us, state preemption has a disproportionate impact, as you know, on minority Black cities, often limiting local authority to act on worker protection, tenant rights, public health measures, and environmental standards, precisely the tools mayors need to address inequities. The African American mayors are responding strategically and collaboratively. Through organizations like ours, we're building multicultural, multi-city coalitions that elevate shared concerns and present a unified voice to state legislators. Many are also engaging with business leaders who understand that work protections and healthy communities are essential to economic growth, as well as community advocates who bring lived experience and moral urgency to policy debates. When direct action is blocked, mayors are finding a creative pathways using executive authority, city contracting, data transparency, and pilot programs to advance goals within our existing constraints while continuing to push for long-term changes to state and local power dynamics.
Those are some great strategies there. Tim, for you, uh, like City Health prides itself on being a package that's rooted in best practices and practically feasible in many, many cities. Since you're the leader of a right leaning organization, how do you see City Health's 12 policies aligning with the priorities of right leaning elected officials? And what are some examples you're hearing from conservative led cities that are putting these ideas into practice?
Sure. Great question. Now, um, I'm a big tent person because of my first boss and Governor Haley Barbour, and I believe it. We're talking about working on that these are not partisan issues, and I one of the things that we our mission our from our mission points with CLA. We don't look at ourselves as if you will, a right-leaning organization. We're a common sense organization. There's being the national forum for Republican mayors, city council, and county leaders, you get a swath from everywhere, right? From different parts of the country and everything. So I think a big key for us is really that is big tent. We're not pushing people out. We're bringing people in, right, and making sure we keep them in. What works in one community doesn't necessarily. It's not the same for every community, right? No matter size, demographics, or location. It's just not one size fits all. So that's one thing that I think that we've really stressed with our forum is that don't come in expecting 10 for 10, right? Sometimes you get 6 for 10. Some years you get 10 for 10. But again, it's about it's a marathon with no finish line, right? And I think that's where our communities, ones that have been medal recipients, but ones that could be potential medal recipients, but at the same time, as we talked earlier, some of our other communities that are just learning things from, if you will, the policy assessments that are made by City Health. I think a good example is, also, not to pat the back and toot the horn of my own city, but Omaha. I think it's I think there, everybody kind of looks at Omaha and and goes, why do people live there when it's 30 below zero? I agree with that, okay? But they look at Omaha, and as we know from a political side, it's it's the blue dot, or the district is, right? And Omaha is a very it's not a purple city. It's a, if you will, it's a blue city in a congressional district that is purple. But in Omaha and Akeem, I applaud yourself and others at City Health. Um, uh, Taking the time, working with the city council, which is pretty evenly split from both on both sides of the aisle. But you also, you have a new mayor here, John Ewing, who has done a fantastic job, who has taken the place for Mayor Stothard. So really, you're working with a Republican, if you will, administration at the mayor's office, but it's also you took the time and worked with the city council. So I don't think it matters. Obviously, on the what party you belong to or support. I think it's looking at these ideas like in Omaha, working from one administration then to the next one. I'm confident that here, because of the ground that you've laid here, that with Mayor Ewing and his administration, and the city council, that not only are those policies going to be continue to be implemented, but I think new ones will be as well over time. And I think that's one of the biggest things we want to be able to do is working with City Health when we collaborate. Is again, where are we at on a city? How can we help them and move forward? Fort Worth is another example, but Fort Worth starts with Betsy Price, right? Who, so we kind of, and continued on to Mayor Parker. So I think that's the key is, a change in administration doesn't mean a change of great policy that City Health is putting forward.
Akeem, can I just jump in here for a quick second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to emphasize you were talking about the contrast in different cities. I think being able for City Health to be able to provide an array of policies, whether it's, if, for example, talking about mental health or talking about one of the issues that everybody talks about is gun safety, things like that. I know these are particularly hot button issues, but I think being able to, again, meet cities and communities where they are, two of the biggest things that people are facing in addition to housing is mental health and public safety, I would say. And so I think that's, and being able to address approaches like prevention, being able to kind of lean into where there are gaps that are emerging now, whether it's gaps in funding or whether it's gaps in what policy is allowed. I think those will be very, very important for City Health to lean into at a moment now. And I think also looking at, because a lot of your engagement is with mayors, looking to mayors not only to lead in terms of policy, but also lead in their role in terms of convening people at the table who can help make these changes. So it's not just the policy, but what other actions can the mayors take in having these difficult conversations in their community and getting things done, continuing to move it forward, and looking, for example, on the housing issue, having mayors and state legislators collaborate on affordable housing solutions. So looking at unusual partners and not just looking to Washington.
Yeah, that's a great transition to one of the questions in the Q&A from Devin Nixon. Devin says, I teach health policy to registered nurses. They have daily interactions with the most marginalized in our communities. I'd love to know what the most impactful action they can take to help progress policy and inform our governments about what is happening with their constituents. I constantly get a question of a similar vein especially from public health workers. Like, what's the best strategy in order to get elected officials to understand, care, and act on issues around public health. Given you guys' career
Bring
working with
them
elected
to
officials, yeah, what are your thoughts?
invite them to your workplace, and bring them to see firsthand what's going on. That's the most impactful thing. And I would say not only the mayors and other elected officials locally, but also obviously members of Congress and folks that so they can see firsthand what the impact is. But I think until you hear it directly from people who are impacted, it's not going to have as big of an effect. I think being able to speak directly to what's happening in the community is very important.
And I think not just see it and hear it, but I think we saw this during COVID. Remember when COVID first came out, we kind of all blew it off, and we were like, "Oh, it happened in another country," and then, "Oh, it was slowly happening in New York," and then when it hit everybody's city, then, we got the attention of data collection. What was really happening? How many lives could it really endanger? What were the best practices as to how to not, have contact with someone? What if you got COVID? How are we testing? Like all the things that information came from health professionals. That didn't come from local government. They were advising health professionals on what to do and how to do it. And at the time, most of you may know my home state is Arkansas. So I had moved from New York back to Little Rock during COVID. And Governor Hutchinson's staff contacted me and asked me, could I implement the COVID vaccinations in majority minority areas because they, quote, weren't getting vaccinated. And the question was, how do they get vaccinated? It wasn't that they didn't want to get vaccinated. It was how, what's the process, right? Because they were going to sign up for vaccinations and they would go to certain retailers to sign up for their vaccination and they would get there and say, oh, it must have been a glitch in the system. We don't have your vaccination available now. And so for us to be able to go in and do 1,000 vaccinations every day in majority minority areas, people were lined up. And I used to cry at the end of every clinic and say, oh my God, there are another 200, 300 people standing outside waiting for if we have leftovers. And, so that kind of thing. So it was healthcare professionals in my state, I know, and across the US that actually stepped up and gave local officials the data. They showed them pictures. We had footage. We had everything to say, this is right in your face. Is this what you want to happen in your city?
Tim?
Yeah, being present, Virginia, you were saying, I agree, being present, not just, we always, in my career, I always laugh at people like, I remember I went to that one conference one time and you know what? We had our CEO give a speech and it was great. And then you never see or do anything again, right? It's about being present at it, to your, go visiting. It could be a social event. What are those things? Don't just look at, hey, boy, I'm going to go to the city council meeting or the county meeting. I'm gonna engage with folks on a different level. And that's one thing that we've really stressed to our forum. Don't never use the word, we're going to do some outreach. Outreach is, it sounds like you're just checking a box, right? No, you want to engage, you want to develop relationships. And I think that's what's been very critical and helpful. The other real quick here too is, we made a change within CLA one, and we've addressed, much like everybody here, obviously public health issues at meetings and conferences, but we tie everything together. And I think Phyllis, you were saying, you have public health, you got mental health, you got public safety, right? Public safety has to be part of all this. And so it's not just, we don't look at it as just public health. We look at it, what are, from infrastructure to public safety to all those things, how does that impact it? And then vice versa too. And that's how we've been able to develop some solutions with guidance from you all, but also other partners as well too.
The other quick thing that I would add, building on what Tim said, is it is about relationships. This isn't a one-time thing. You need to make it a consistent relationship. and consistently talking about what is going on in the community, and then also be solutions oriented. These are things that could make it better, because you, in the case of the person who was talking about teaching nurses, you are the expert there, and the elected officials are not experts in things. And so so being able to be solutions oriented, and also about this is in the long term, and being able to grow that relationship and we have a saying, obviously the DHS has adopted, see something, say something. So we're very much about that. So if you see something, say something. And that should be the case for everybody in every community across the board. And not only see something, say something, but do something.
One of the things one of the best practices we use in Arkansas during the COVID vaccination clinics was this came from healthcare professionals just like you that was a teacher. We asked the governor, can you sign off on nursing students doing vaccinations as long as the nursing director or teacher instructor was there? And he signed off on it. And so we use nursing students as healthcare professionals to vaccinate in the masses.
It's interesting. Phyllis, I want to ask you, I want to come back to you for this question. So, part of the model that City Health uses is to partner with cities to provide assistance through the policymaking process, and in some of the policies, even around implementation. How important is that partnership and collaboration with subject matter experts to mayors and their staff when it comes to creating impactful policies?
So for us, partnerships is not optional. It is essential. City leaders operate with tight timelines, limited resources, complex political environments. Access to trusted and subject matter experts can mean the difference between a policy that stalls and one that delivers real impact. Organizations like City Health provide value by offering evidence-based guidance, technical assistance, peer learning, helping cities move from aspiration to implementation. And for African American mayors in particular, these partnerships help ensure that policies are not only effective, but also equity centered and responsive to community realities. Collaboration strengthens capacity, reduces risk, and accelerates progress for us.
If anyone else wants to or answer about the collaboration of the partnership.
I just say the access to the information the fact that you do this program, period, is super helpful, because mayors want to make an impact and they don't always know how. And I think you've given a menu to cities, and not only that, but you help them with the tested policies that have shown through data that they work. And so that you give mayors and city officials a leg up on being able to adopt proven policies that have worked in other places, and also be able to do it in a way that is holistic, and saying, if you want to embrace your entire community, which all elected officials want to do, and focus on the quality of life, these are some of the ways that you can immediately impact. And I think one of the things that's going to be critically important, one of the things that's happening right now, is there's a new mayor's program going on right now at Harvard. So there's about 60 new mayors who are at Harvard. And so hopefully they will all, and we have shared with them City Health information, and so that they know to reach out to you. But hopefully we will be able to start that right fresh when they become mayors, that they'll know that this resource is out there for them, because there's so much on the plate of elected officials. Being able to partner with somebody like City Health, who is able to not only provide a portfolio of different policies and actions that can meet their needs and meet them where they are, but it gives them through the awards program, it says, an attaboy, this is a good thing for you, and that you're doing this, and they can turn to folks who and show that they are being accountable, and that they are delivering for the community.
There's a question in the chat specifically about early childhood and childcare, especially. But the sentiment is around some of the budget challenges and funding challenges that cities are facing. You guys talked about the challenges when it comes to funding that cities face. And I think about this in terms of like what are some of the opportunities for 2026 that cities have in moving the policies in the policy package. I guess I'd like to hear from each of you your thoughts around how cities are navigating budget challenges to provide healthy spaces, whether that's access to green space or tenants' rights or housing affordability. How are cities navigating budget challenges in order to support the people in their communities?
For us, it's usually some type of P3 partnership. And so whether it's a food pantry or a healthy food program, they may get funding from an American Beverage Association. If it's data collection, Bloomberg has their Black Wolf Data Center because cities sometimes aren't able to do like data collection and that kind of thing. They're not equipped to that. I tell people all the time, one, cities are using a 1970s model a lot of the times, especially medium and small size cities don't have that expandable budget. And then a lot of times they don't have the sweat equity necessary. So they leverage their budget through colleges and universities that can help them with data collection and research and that kind of thing. They do P3 partnerships with foundations like Bloomberg, like I think Virginia just alluded to the whole Harvard piece that normally Bloomberg actually financially sponsors. And so those are the kind of things that during this whole shutdown, many of the cities move toward the faith base. My home church in Little Rock, I remember them calling me and said, Phyllis, now how long do you think this shutdown is going to happen? Because they're having to pay people's rent and they're having to help pay people's utilities and that kind of thing. And then we have a large food pantry. And one day we used the food pantry to dispense food to federal employees. And so it's usually all hands on deck. A lot of time our faith-based communities even do the job fairs. And so they expand their resources from every angle that they can. And sometimes it's even the capacity of, I talked about the COVID clinics. We did the COVID clinics a lot of times at churches because they had some of the bigger facilities, and resources, and they had that volunteer base that many cities don't have. Cities don't keep a list of volunteers they can call on. And so those are the kind of things that normally are gaps in the budget that they have grants out there they can apply for, but those P3 partnerships come in every corner of city government as to how they leverage their resources.
I would just say that in terms of public health is really a shared responsibility for everybody. And so what I see some of the mayors doing is, again, as I said earlier, meeting people where they are. So it's having clinics in schools. It is having food available in schools, but also in community centers. It's addressing those kinds of issues in terms of being able to take advantage of some of the resources. For example, in the case of you were talking about green space and access to green space. There are a lot of assets within the communities, and being able to inform people about what assets there are that can be taken advantage of, whether it's free hours at the gym or whether it's other kinds of things. So I think what the mayors are doing are trying to better inform their residents about assets within the community that they can take advantage of. And I think also being able to expand the number of resources that are available, whether it's through partnerships in the private sector, as Phyllis mentioned, or with philanthropy. And so I think that's another example. And I think the other part is being upfront with their constituents about what they can and can't do, based on the situation in terms of budgeting.
And you'll see also a lot of cities, to Virginia's point, that have wraparound services within their public school system. That you can go into that school. You need to go to the clinic. You need to get your driver's license. You need to help apply for a job, whatever the case may be. They have those wraparound services in that school. So you drop your kid off, and then you go over and get your wraparound services.
Tim?
Yeah, triple P, and then throw in another P, philanthropy, right? All those working together. In fact, that's one that, I do look at it as 4 Ps, and that's one thing that we've stressed to our communities that we work with. I think the other we COVID time and on through the last year's budget. What are we doing and stuff? Review, audit, what works, what doesn't work, what are we spending, where do we need more because we get less, right? And so if you have less, you got to look at, okay, not just a fell swoop on like, boy, this doesn't, let's just cut this, let's do this, but doing not just a financial audit, but do an audit and go, okay, is this what we're trying to do in public health, or are we trying to do something else? Are we spending enough here? Should we spend more here? Are we spending too much there? And that's where I think from a policy, the policy assessment plays a big role in with our communities. The other things from the policy, I think we're, if you will, being able to drive some numbers, right, from really those policy assessments, like, okay, what are those percentages with this policy? What are some of the things, if it's a budgetary, or if it's participation, or how have we gotten less harmful opportunities? I think those numbers are always critical. Backing it up to then do what? Go talk to your constituents and say, the reason why we're doing this is because of this. And the reason why we need to, and so I think that's where groups like City Health and others that we work with in if you will, public health, that valuable information is critical for people to, again, keep working on not just those issues, but newly developed, and also taking an audit view and going, what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to enhance?
I think I just wanted, can I just add one quick thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. I feel super strongly that public health is a fundamental human right, and that we are going to need to focus on access to public health for everybody, and that is going to be being access, meaning affordability, access meaning true access to it, delivering it where people are. And so I think that is a big area where City Health can be helpful and lean in terms of access to health, to public health.
Yeah. We're approaching 1:00. Last question, one word answer. So going in, I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite city that's gotten a medal. I know it's like picking a child, so I'm not gonna ask you that. But going into next year, it's the end of the year. Everyone makes their predictions. Going into next year, what do you see as the biggest priority for cities in 2026? One word answer, Tim.
Public safety. Sorry, two, but it's one issue. So,
Virginia?
It's going to be two, reducing costs.
And Phyllis?
Affordable housing.
And those are the three that we've nailed it. I mean,
yeah,
well done.
If you could get three,
exactly
it'd be those
three.
But
I would also add mental health to this, because I think we're at a very fragile time, and so I would encourage everybody to lean into that.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this panel. I greatly appreciate it, and look forward to working with you guys continued in the future. You guys can learn more about City Health at our website, cityhealth.org. And you can follow City Health across all social media platforms. Stay tuned for more information about the 3.0 policy package. And next year, City Health will be celebrating its 10-year anniversary. So definitely sign up for the newsletter to get more information about the different ways we'll be highlighting City Health success over the past 10 years. Thank you for joining us, and you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.